Hello wonderful people, Connor Whitmore here again with another video for you on the Nawtystep channel, and today I'm going to be talking about the new album, the debut album from Nitepunk, Human. This is the debut full-length LP from Lasha Mamulashvili, aka Nitepunk, who over the last half-decade or so has been steadily working his way up to icon status in the bass scene. Since making his way to the US from his native Georgia in 2015, it's been far from the easiest journey. Only becoming a US resident 1 year into that and working multiple jobs to make ends meet, adapting to an entirely new culture, and of course a pandemic which happened in amidst all of that, an abundance of trouble, strife and difficulty in a new environment which I imagine created a lot of pent-up emotion, which is no doubt reflected in his art. As over time he's honed one of the gnarliest and most savage and most identifiable sounds in bass music. Centered a lot around breaks, with a very edgy and jagged aesthetic and a kind of anarchic feel to it, functioning as a modern or updated take on The Prodigy, who he cites as one of his biggest inspirations. His profile picture even adopts the same out of focus effect as the artwork for The Prodigy's album Fat of the Land. A style and sound that hadn't made waves in bass music for a long time, so its uniqueness gave it liftoff, releasing big originals with Never Say Die, Disciple, Circus and UKF at the end of the 2010s. There was also of course his remix of the legendary Amalke track Fabrication, beginning to build a bit of a cult following before perhaps his most significant release yet at that point, with his debut EP Red Turbulence on Never Say Die. A seismic moment not only for Nitepunk but also for Never Say Die as a mostly dubstep oriented label, and also beyond that the scene overall. Such a unique and forward-thinking sound being right at the forefront of the bass mainstream, and yeah, it ended up being many people's favourite EP of 2020. And after that, from there, continually refining his sound more and more, and I really can't stress that enough, his productions come on leaps and bounds even in the last kind of 3 years or so, all of which has led us to Human. Now with such an identifiable style, before going into Human I was curious as to how that would stretch over the course of a whole LP. Would there be enough variety over the 15 cuts? Would it sound too similar in large parts? And I think at least on the variety front, Nitepunk has definitely made this the impressive debut everyone hoped it would be. There's track 2, Hyperdust, which sees him take his style down a distinctly trap avenue. I have to be honest, the main drop here I actually find to be the most laboured on the LP. There's not much going on here. And the steel drum chime kind of moment following that feels oddly empty for him, and the track overall just feels a bit over and done with without doing a lot. However, the ravey stabs that open up the track and bring in the outro, stitch the track together a bit, are some of the best sounds on the whole LP, and it is one of the best motifs on the LP for how much it's repeated. Yeah, just riveting stuff. On the variety front, we also have more deep line cuts like I Know That You Know with X and G, and Spider with Tida. I Know That You Know shows off some of the best drum work I've heard in a while, the snares here, the vacuous fills that we get, that I mean, yeah, it's as attention grabbing as it gets, with incredibly gritty drops that cut very deep and which are very gravelly in sound, and also produced extremely well. I do think the vocal overwhelms the instrumental at points in the first half, just as it's getting into its stride, but it's a mostly good combination with a super catchy hook and a generally thrilling Akira, the film Akira kind of vibe about it. Equally gritty, if not more so, is Spider, probably the meanest track on the album. A tune with a bass line that exudes so much evil in its execution that your stomach's left completely tied in knots by the end of it. Very menacing, and I think my favourite of the new cuts released with this LP. In between those, we have Nitepunk dipping into house with Point alongside Abstract, which almost functions as a centerpiece for the album given the significant tempo switch at that point where it is in the track list. I heard this as a single when it came out in April last year and didn't make that much of it. Weirdly, the lead line felt a bit clunky and a little bit forced to me. But very happy to say that I think the complete opposite now. This is a very good collaboration and a really good mix of their styles. The aforementioned lead line is catchy as hell, it's full of force, there's loads of raw energy about it. It's just grungy, punky bass house. I mean, what is not to like here, past Connor? Track 9, Too Hot to Touch, takes the album down a more dubsteppy route and is one of the more brutal cuts on the LP. The heaviness here providing the image of some kind of ravenous beast, and paired with, I think, one of his most iconic vocals yet. The coolest part for me happening near the end, where this robotic synth kinda imitates the main vocal refrain we get permeating the tune. It's one of the best moments on the LP in my opinion. That vocal sample that we get near the beginning though, and elsewhere about girlfriends and liking to party, I'm not quite sure what the point of that is, or how it fits, or yeah, just what the purpose of it is within the track. If someone could explain, that'd be great. Variety-wise, we also have the final 4 on Human, which take the album in a mostly more chilled direction to wind it down somewhat. Nephilim's drama at track 12 is a concept that I really enjoy overall. The infectious musicality that's repeated very well, just more laid back in feel for him. In amidst that good melodic work, some of the sounds here are a little bit invasive, really stretched out and slightly uncomfortable, but the general makeup of that track is fantastic, very cleverly composed, and one of the most impressive on the LP overall in my opinion. A little Easter egg for you, the chants that we get at the beginning and the end of that track are from a Georgian festival where fans are chanting the name of his previous alias, Lasha Kicks. Lasha Kicks! Lasha Kicks. Following that is Sober, and I mean, if you want to know what a deep, immersive, introspective, atmospheric, future garage-leaning Nitepunk track sounds like, here you have it. Great, I think, to hear a really toned-down version of his style with a load of distant, Burial-esque vocal sampling going on in the background. It's another personal pick for me. Also love the cross-referencing to Moonlight Crime with the "I just don't know" sample. And closing the LP, we have Better Off, which is about as fitting an end as you could have for a debut Nitepunk album. Breaks driven, sure. Energized, absolutely, but still somber enough, I think, to separate it out from his main style and constitute as variety here. The refrain of I'm Better Off Alone from vocalist Yana fits the instrumental perfectly, words that I think tie in with Nitepunk's journey very well. I mean, he made his way on his own. He was very much better off alone. With the final section here on this tune, and of the album of course, sounding like the sun piercing through dark clouds, as if to say, yeah, he's happy now. That's what this track represents. It's the end of going through all those trials and tribulations. He's now out on the other side and can show the world what he can do. That is what this album represents. It represents what he's gone through, the journey he has been on. So yeah, stylistically, there's variety aplenty on this LP, and with that, we get an abundance of vintage Nitepunk sound, all of which has been out a while by now. A few of the tracks I've yet to talk about here are just solid Nitepunk without being particularly statement-making within his discography and the album, namely Grounded, Flow, I'm Not Yours and You're Not Mine. The first of those, Grounded, opens up the album, sets the scene really well with the piano, this conversational rap vocal, which is very catchy as well. Great flow to it. Classically twisted Nitepunk heaviness, without a spark, but constituting as a good introduction to his sound at the very beginning here, as if to kind of say, yeah, this is what you're gonna get, a lot of this. Track 5, Flow, is another pretty catchy Nitepunk tune, not one of his best, but again, solid. I do have to mention the range in flows that we get here in owing to the track title. It's 3 pretty different drops using the same sounds, which does keep it engaging. The same can be said for I'm Not Yours and You're Not Mine. Yana features again here with a charming vocal that roots it in this kind of nocturnal feel, lures you in really well. A beautifully colourful outro to end this one as well, and acting as a bit of a break from the savagery which has been quite intense up to that point in the LP. And heaviness wise, this one again just being catchy enough without being a standout. That leaves a few cuts that for me showcase Nitepunk in full flow, doing his most renowned style extremely well. The penultimate track, Black in Colours, I actually love most for the vocal, very graceful and spirited, and one of the most memorable in the LP for sure. But it wouldn't be anywhere near as much without the instrumental. I think the contrast here between the heaviness and the vocal is quite stark, but he gets the chemistry between them spot on here, where he perhaps doesn't quite as much in other tracks. The drops as well are some of his cleanest, with a distinct edge to them. Just pretty complete feeling overall, this one. We also have MTV, which for me captures exactly what he's best at. Super dynamic drops, jagged aesthetic, a retro feel permeating the whole thing. It's compelling stuff. The animated rap vocal lifts the track up even more and gives it added character. We've got a fade out for the outro as well. Just rounded off really well. All the transitioning is so on point, and for a track this heavy to sound that radio friendly is incredible in my opinion, and is definitely the biggest compliment I can pay it. And then Miracle, which sports another one of his most iconic vocals yet, and arguably the most time-stopping one. Big Nero vibes. Another cut with some of the best drum work I've heard in a while, really captivating and quite difficult to tear yourself away from. With, I think, a particularly considered feel, you know, constructed with a bit more patience, sections allowed to breathe a little bit more, which, again, I can't say quite for several others here. And the right consistency from one drop to another, like very full throttle, very full on, very in your face, but also simultaneously so measured and so controlled. I mean, there isn't really a bad track here, guys. Like, some of them are better, of course, that is par for the course. But there isn't an entirely start-to-finish dud, I don't think, and that is quite rare in a bass album. My issue with Human actually lies in the spacing out of these tunes, the track list to be more specific. As a front-to-back experience, it feels pretty top-heavy in terms of the relationship between the heavier material and the lighter, chiller, more overtly melodic material. The first 10 tracks or so here that we get are all quite intense, with a similar kind of energy, within which there isn't that much of a break, and you find yourself trying to catch your breath a little bit. Having the lighter tracks that we get concentrated at the end be distributed a bit more over the stretch of the album would have made for a more digestible listen overall, I think. Not only would this pace out the heaviness a bit more and not make it quite so full on overall, but it would highlight those heavier tracks a bit more and give them even more focus and limelight within the LP. Pretty much all the heaviness sounds great, as I've discussed already, but it is shoved to the front, and banger upon banger makes for more of a compilation than an album. There's also a bit of a building issue with quite a few of these tracks for me, just rushing into the heaviness from the introductions way too quickly. Meaning a good amount of it feels a little bit hurried, you know, transitioning into drops out of nowhere, and between tracks as well, actually, just a bit too quickly. The interlude Move Ahead at track 11 is so short and nondescript it feels kinda superfluous. And it's also why tracks like Miracle, which as I mentioned earlier is a bit more drawn out and considered, really stand out. Something many have highlighted as well, and which I kinda hinted at earlier also, it doesn't feel as much like a new project as it could have given how many of these cuts were out already before the LP came out, more than half. Which is fine for me personally. I did quite a good job of staying away from the singles when they were coming out for the most part, when I could, you know, tell that something substantial was going to be the result of all these singles, so the vast majority of it when I heard it for the first time the whole way through was new to me. But for many listeners I think it's fair to say the dopamine hit had been had with most of these already. That being said, I do like all the full tracks we get here to varying degrees for their own specific things of course, which again, seldom that happens, and I really do think he cemented himself as one of the best bass producers with this LP. He's doubled down with a unique aesthetic and delivered a statement-making collection full of catchy ideas and vocals and riffs and melodies, with a lot of variety as well. Incredible percussive work too, which, as we all know, doesn't come around often in this scene. It isn't the smoothest album listen per se, but is it an assortment of cuts that all have something about them? Absolutely. And to be bringing this sound across an entire album at a point where the mainstream of bass is crying out for it is special, and I think we can only hope he continues to carry this torch and be that flag bearer as he creates more and more well into the future. But there we have it, my extended thoughts, my full review of the debut album from Nitepunk, Human. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you all enjoyed it. Now I want to know what you guys think of this LP. What do you make of it overall? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Which tracks are your favourites, etc. And also let me know below what you made of my thoughts, my review. Drop it all down below in the comment section. Beyond that, please subscribe if you are yet to. All my social media stuff is in the description, including my Patreon link. If you want to load more bass music content, then you can find that through the link below. But yeah, keep it naughty. If it is naughty, then you know, and I shall see all of you legends in the next one, whatever that might be. Peace.